It began on a quiet Tuesday morning. The sun had barely climbed over the rooftops, painting the streets in gold, when the first silver shadow fell across the sky. At first, people thought it was a cloud, but clouds didn't hum like that. Clouds didn't stretch from one horizon to the other. High above Earth, massive alien ships hung in the blue, like giant mirrors, their surfaces smooth and glowing faintly. Birds scattered, dogs barked. Children pointed at the sky with wide eyes. Across the world, traffic stopped, conversations froze, and millions of faces turned upward in the same moment. In her small apartment in London, Dr. Leah Carter stood by the window with a cup of tea in her hand. She was a linguist, used to studying the way people spoke, the way meaning hid in words. But there were no words for this. The ships floated silently, not moving, as if they owned the sky. She could almost feel them watching. Within minutes, television and radio channels were taken over. Every screen, every speaker, every phone rang with the same sound, a deep, calm voice, smooth like glass. "People of Earth," it said, "we come not to harm you, but to take what we require. Your species is strong and capable. We demand a number of you healthy, young, able, to serve as workers for our worlds. This is not a request. You will comply." The message played in every language. The words were polite, but the tone carried something colder than ice. Leah sat down slowly, the tea forgotten on the table. She felt a knot in her chest. This was not a movie, not a dream. Someone out there believed they could simply take people away. She thought of her younger brother, Daniel, who was studying engineering. Would they take him? Would they take the children she saw walking to school every morning? Across the globe, the reaction was instant, but not the one the aliens expected. People didn't scream in the streets. They didn't rush to surrender. There was fear, yes, but also a strange quiet. Phones buzzed with messages. "Did you hear? They can't do that." "Right. What do we do?" In Washington, London, Beijing, and dozens of other capitals, leaders connected through secure channels. The alien fleet was far beyond anything Earth's military could face, but no one wanted to simply give in. Somewhere in the middle of that conversation, a decision began to take shape, not to fight, but to stall. Hours later, the aliens sent a second message. "You have 2 Earth days to provide the required number of captives. Failure to do so will result in the removal of our choosing." The arrogance in the voice made Leah's skin prickle. She imagined the speaker, tall, alien, looking down on humans as if they were animals in a pen. She wondered if he even understood what humanity was. By evening, news channels were filled with grainy footage of the alien ships. They didn't look like the warships from science fiction. No weapons, no flashing lights, but there was something more frightening in their stillness. It was the stillness of someone who already believed they had won. In a quiet meeting room in Geneva, representatives from dozens of nations gathered. Some wanted to fight anyway, no matter the cost. Others argued it would be suicide. In the middle of the table, someone suggested something unusual. "Let's agree to meet them, ask questions, pretend to cooperate. We need time." Leah didn't know it yet, but her phone would ring before the night ended. Someone high up in the government remembered her work on alien linguistics, a field most thought was only theory until today. They would want her there when humanity met the aliens face-to-face. Outside, the world held its breath. Families ate dinner together in silence. Children slept curled close to their parents. In cities, strangers began speaking to each other as if they had always known one another. Fear was there, but it was mixed with something else, a stubbornness that sat deep in the human heart. The aliens thought they had landed over a frightened, divided world. What they didn't know was that something had shifted the moment they made their demand. People weren't just afraid. They were thinking. They were remembering every story, every moment in history when someone tried to take what wasn't theirs. And in small apartments, quiet kitchens, and dimly lit meeting rooms, a thought began to grow. They may have ships, they may have power, but they don't know us, not yet. High above, the alien commander Velthar watched the planet turn slowly beneath his fleet. He had taken worlds before. He had seen fear break civilizations in hours. But as his scanners swept over the human cities, he saw something strange. No stampede, no panic, no mass surrender. The humans simply carried on. Velthar narrowed his eyes. They will learn, he told himself, but somewhere deep inside, a quiet unease began to stir. Velthor stood at the center of his command deck, his tall frame wrapped in silver armor that reflected the glow of alien instruments. The great viewing wall showed Earth turning slowly in the void, a swirl of blue and white. To him, it was just another world, beautiful perhaps, but no different from the others he had conquered. He had expected fear. He had expected riots, chaos, and desperate offers of surrender. That was how most species reacted when they heard the voice of the Krail Dominion. But these humans, they were strange. Reports from his scouts came in through glowing tablets. They described people going to work as usual, children playing in parks, and families eating meals together. Yes, there was unease, but not the panic that would make them easy to control. Velthar dismissed the scouts as inexperienced. Humans are hiding their fear, he told himself. It will show soon enough. On the ground, Dr. Leah Carter sat in a quiet government building, her fingers wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. She had been flown to Geneva that morning and brought straight into a meeting room where ministers and military officials whispered over papers and screens. They spoke in tense, clipped voices, their eyes tired but determined. The plan was simple on the surface. Agree to meet the aliens, show willingness to cooperate, and use the time to prepare something better than blind resistance. But Leah sensed something deeper. The leaders weren't just buying time for strategy. They were also letting the people breathe, keeping hope alive. When her turn came to speak, Leah explained what she had noticed in the alien broadcast. The voice, she said, was steady, but almost proud. They believe they've already won. That arrogance can be dangerous for them. It makes them predictable. A general leaned forward. Predictable, how? They'll expect submission, Leah answered. If they don't get it, they'll try harder to intimidate us. That's when they'll make mistakes. That afternoon, Earth's representatives sent a message back to the alien fleet. It was polite, almost overly so, thanking them for their interest in humanity and requesting an in-person meeting to discuss terms and logistics. To Velthor, it seemed like compliance, exactly what he wanted. He allowed himself a thin smile, but down below, the real work began. Governments quietly coordinated global communications to keep morale steady. News anchors spoke calmly on live television. Social media posts encouraged unity and kindness. Across cities, people organized community dinners, open markets, and music nights, anything to keep spirits high. The goal was simple: deny the aliens the fear they fed on. Velthar didn't notice at first. His attention was fixed on choosing the location for the meeting, a vast, open plain in a desert region where his ship could land without risk. He imagined stepping onto the Earth's soil, towering over the humans as they stood in awe. He had done it many times before. Meanwhile, Leah worked with a small team of scientists and cultural experts. Their task was not to fight, but to understand, to learn everything they could about the alien's psychology from the smallest clues. She replayed the alien message again and again, studying the rhythm, the pauses, even the tone shifts between languages. The more she listened, the more she was certain they didn't understand humanity at all. 2 days passed quickly. When the alien fleet finally sent word that their commander would meet human leaders, the world reacted with quiet anticipation rather than fear. Streets filled with people waving flags, not in surrender, but in solidarity. On the morning of the meeting, Velthor stood in his private chamber. looking over the uniforms of his chosen guards. "Today," he told them, "we remind this species of its place." His voice was confident, but deep inside, a whisper of doubt had started to grow, planted by the strange calm he kept seeing in human eyes. Back on Earth, Leah boarded a small convoy headed for the meeting site. The sun was bright, the desert stretching endlessly around them. She thought about what might happen when she looked an alien in the eye for the first time. Would they see her as just another face in the crowd, or would they notice the quiet challenge in her gaze? That night, while Velthwar prepared his grand entrance, humans across the world prepared in their own way. They told stories to their children, shared meals with neighbors, and kept life going as normally as they could. The aliens had come expecting a frightened, broken species. What they found instead was something far more dangerous. A united one. And though neither Leah nor Velthor could see the future, the first miscalculation had already been made. The invaders thought they were the hunters. They didn't yet realize they were stepping into a game humanity had already begun to play. The morning of the meeting dawned bright and clear. Across the world, people awoke with the same thought in mind. We are still here. No cities had been destroyed. No people had been taken yet. The alien ships still hovered silently in the sky, glinting like silver blades. But life on Earth was far from broken. In small towns, neighbors knocked on each other's doors, carrying bread, fruit, and warm drinks. In crowded cities, strangers stopped to help elderly people cross the road or carry their groceries. It was as if the entire planet had decided, without being told, that kindness would be its shield. Dr. Leah Carter noticed it on the drive toward the meeting site. Her convoy passed through villages where people waved as they went by. Children held up signs painted with bright colors, some saying "Stay strong," others showing pictures of the Earth surrounded by smiling faces. Leah felt a warmth in her chest that no alien threat could erase. Meanwhile, in the high orbit above Earth, alien scouts were sent down to observe. Velthor had ordered them to collect images of terrified crowds, desperate families, and leaders begging for mercy. But what the scouts found made their reports sound almost confused. "Commander," one scout reported, "the humans are gathering. They are not hiding. They appear to be celebrating." Velthor frowned. "Celebrating what?" The scout hesitated. "Everything. Anything. They eat together in the open. They sing. They laugh." The commander dismissed the scout with a wave. He told himself it was nothing, a cultural quirk. But deep down, something about it unsettled him. Fear was supposed to be the first step in control. Without it, the rest of his plan would be harder. On the ground, the kindness kept spreading like a silent network, a web no alien could cut. Markets stayed open, not to sell for profit, but to give away food. Schools continued classes, with teachers telling students stories about courage and history. Musicians gathered in parks, playing tunes that drifted up into the sky as if meant for the ships above. Leah realized something important as she watched it all happen. Fear isolates people, but kindness draws them together. The aliens' greatest weapon, fear, was being dulled every hour by acts of unity at the meeting site. Preparations were underway for the alien landing. Long tables were set up beneath large white tents. Chairs were placed for leaders, translators, and observers. But scattered among the official arrangements were unexpected touches: flowers in vases, baskets of fresh bread, pitchers of cool water. Leah had insisted on it. "If they think we're going to bow and tremble," she said, "let's show them the opposite. Let's show them how we welcome guests, even unwanted ones." That afternoon, Leah and her team were given clearance to roam the surrounding area. She walked through a small desert town nearby, speaking with locals. She saw a grandmother teaching children to knead dough for bread. She saw young men stringing lanterns across the street, preparing for the evening. Everyone was calm, busy, and strangely happy. Back in orbit, Alien officers began to whisper among themselves. Some had seen the human gatherings from their landing shuttles. They had tasted the strange smells of human food drifting on the wind, heard the laughter of children. A few of them found themselves curious instead of dominant. One young alien technician recorded a human song on his communicator, replaying it in secret later. Another copied the recipe for a bread she had been offered by a smiling villager. These were small cracks, but cracks nonetheless, the first signs that the human spirit was slipping into the alien ranks. That evening, the desert sky turned gold with the setting sun. In the central square of the small town, a group of villagers set out long tables and invited anyone, human or alien, to sit and share a meal. No alien came that night, but the invitation was clear. Leah sat with them, breaking bread and listening to stories. A little boy asked her if the aliens would be angry. She smiled gently. Maybe, but they can't take away who we are. And, high above, Velther looked at the latest scout reports, his jaw tightening. His officers spoke less about efficiency and more about curiosity. They asked questions about human customs, human music, human art. He shut them down each time, but he could feel the shift. The humans were building something he couldn't see, couldn't measure, a net woven from kindness, from shared meals, from music under the stars. And whether he realized it or not, that net was already reaching for his own people. The desert meeting site shimmered under the afternoon sun. Rows of white tents stood in the open sand, their edges fluttering gently in the warm wind. Inside, tables were lined with colorful cloths, vases of wildflowers, and baskets of fresh fruit and bread. To the casual eye, it looked like a welcome festival. But to those who knew the truth, it was something more, a stage carefully set for the aliens. Dr. Leah Carter walked slowly through the preparations, checking every detail. The flowers were real, freshly picked that morning by local children. The food came from farms and kitchens nearby, rich with scents that would drift on the air. But hidden among the decorations were tiny observation devices, no bigger than a grain of rice. They were placed to record the aliens, every word, every reaction. This isn't just about meeting them, Leah told the team of engineers and cultural experts working with her. It's about making them see us, really see us. And it's about us learning everything we can about them. By late afternoon, the air began to hum. A deep vibration rolled through the ground. People turned their heads toward the horizon. Over the sand dunes, a massive alien shuttle descended slowly, its silver hull reflecting the sun like a mirror. A shadow swept across the camp as it came to rest just outside the tent circle. Velthar emerged first. He was tall and imposing, his silver armor polished to perfection. Behind him came his chosen guards, 8 of them, moving with the precision of trained warriors. Their eyes, a deep metallic blue, scanned the humans with the cold detachment of hunters. And yet, the humans did not cower. Instead, they stood in neat rows, smiling politely. A group of children in bright clothes held small flags and waved as the aliens approached. Leah noticed a flicker of confusion in the guard closest to her. Just a tiny hesitation before his expression returned to stone. Velthar's voice was smooth as he greeted them. "Representatives of Earth," he said, "we accept your invitation to discuss the terms of your service to the Krail Dominion." The human leader, a tall man named President Alvarez, stepped forward. His voice was warm but steady. "Commander Velthar, welcome to our world. We hope you will accept our hospitality before we discuss anything else." Velthar's brow furrowed slightly. Hospitality. With a gesture, Alvarez led them toward the long tables. Bread, fruit, roasted vegetables, and cool water were laid out in abundance. Musicians in one corner played soft melodies on wooden instruments, the notes floating like a breeze. "This is our custom when we meet guests," Alvarez explained. "We share food, we share music, we share our stories." Velthar hesitated. It was a simple thing, but his people had no such tradition. Meals in the Dominion were functional, eaten quickly, and without conversation. He glanced at his guards, expecting them to show no interest. Yet 2 of them were watching the musicians, with open curiosity. Leah took her seat across from one of the younger alien officers. She offered him a plate of bread. "It's warm," she said gently. "Freshly made." The officer stared at it, then at her. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he took a piece. Leah noticed the way his eyes shifted when he tasted it, just for a second. The coldness softened. Throughout the meeting, translators worked quickly, carrying words between the 2 sides. Officially, the conversation was about the terms the aliens demanded. Unofficially, Leah watched carefully for every reaction, the way an officer leaned forward when a child laughed nearby, the way one guard's head tilted at the scent of roasted herbs. Velthar remained composed, but he could feel the subtle pull of the scene. The humans were not defiant in an obvious way. They were open, warm, inviting. And yet, in that openness, there was something unbreakable. The real trap was not the hidden devices, though they were recording everything. The real trap was emotional. The longer the aliens stayed among the humans, the harder it would be to see them as captives. By evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the desert in gold, the formal talks ended without agreement. Velthar told himself it was fine, they would simply take what they needed later. But as he walked back to his shuttle, the sound of the human music lingered in his mind. Inside the tent, Leah watched them go. She knew they hadn't won anything yet. But she also knew the first threads of the net had been thrown. The aliens had tasted their bread. They had heard their songs. And seeds, once planted, could grow in the most unexpected places. The desert had fallen quiet after the meeting, but the silence was not the same as before. Something invisible had changed. Veltor sat alone in his private chamber aboard the flagship, staring at the table before him. On the table lay a piece of bread, carefully wrapped in a cloth. He had not eaten it at the meeting, but he had taken it with him. He wasn't sure why. He told himself it was nothing, a curiosity, nothing more. Yet, in the back of his mind, the warm smell of roasted herbs lingered. The humans had been calm, smiling, unafraid. He had expected defiance or begging, not welcome. Reports began arriving from his officers. At first, they were the usual summaries: troop readiness, supply counts, ship maintenance, but slowly, other details crept in. A guard had been seen watching human musicians for an unusually long time. A technician had returned from a scouting mission with strange carvings given by local villagers. One officer had asked to taste more human food, for research purposes. Velthar frowned as he read. It was harmless, he told himself, mere curiosity. But he also knew that curiosity was dangerous. His people had been trained to see others as resources, not equals. If that training began to erode, discipline would follow, down on Earth. Leah Carter noticed the same thing, but from the opposite side. She had seen the subtle changes in the alien faces at the meeting, the way one guard's eyes softened when a child offered him water, the slight pause before another returned a handshake. She knew these were small cracks, but cracks could grow, and once pride was damaged, even the strongest armor could break. Over the next few days, alien patrols continued to move through towns and cities, but they no longer inspired pure fear. Instead of hiding, many humans stepped forward to greet them, offering food or music. Some even taught the aliens simple games, tossing balls, folding paper into shapes, or drawing in the dirt. One night, Leah received a quiet message from a translator working inside the alien ship. There, starting to ask questions, the message said, about why we live the way we do, about our families, about our stories. She read it twice, smiling faintly. The net was tightening, but without force. Without violence, only by showing the aliens what it meant to be human. Meanwhile, in his quarters, Velthar called in one of his youngest officers, a tall, quiet figure named Relis. I hear you've been speaking with humans, Velthar said, his tone sharp. Yes, Commander, Relis admitted. They tell stories at night, under the stars. They invited me to listen. And what did you learn from these stories? Velthar asked. Relis hesitated. That they value one another above all else. That even when they are afraid, they take care of each other. I do not understand it fully, but it feels strong. Velthar's jaw tightened. Strength is measured by control. Relis, do not forget that. Yes, Commander, Relis replied, though there was something in his voice that suggested he already had. The commander dismissed him. But for the rest of the night, Velthar could not sleep. The image of humans sitting together under the stars stayed with him. He remembered the sound of their music, soft, layered, unlike anything in the Dominion. It was not the sound of fear. On Earth, Leah continued her work, visiting more towns and speaking with locals. She told them, keep showing them who we are. Don't provoke them, but don't hide. Be open, be human, and they did. Villages welcomed alien patrols with open-air meals. City streets rang with laughter and song, even under the shadow of hovering ships. By the end of the week, something remarkable happened. Alien patrols began to slow down. Instead of marching quickly through human settlements, they lingered, they talked, they accepted small gifts, a flower, a carved stone, a cup of tea. Velthar noticed the change and grew uneasy. His people were no longer acting like conquerors. The cracks in their pride were widening, and through them, the light of humanity was slipping in. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange, Velthar stood at the viewing wall of his flagship, staring down at the planet. He had come to take captives. Yet now, he wondered if it was his own fleet that was slowly being captured, not by force, but by something far harder to resist. The order came at sunrise. Velthar's voice echoed through every alien ship in orbit. This is your final warning, humans. Surrender the captives we have requested, or your world will suffer economic destruction from above. It was meant to crush the last threads of resistance. It was meant to remind humanity who held power. But down on Earth, the message had a different effect. In small homes and busy markets, in city squares and rural fields, people stopped what they were doing and looked at one another. The fear was there, yes, but so was something stronger, a decision. Leah Carter was in the capital when the order came. She stood in a room full of advisors and leaders, watching the alien transmission replay on a screen. The tone was calm, confident. Final. President Alvarez turned to Leah. If they expect us to break, he said quietly, then we must show them what we're really made of. And so, within hours, a plan spread across the globe. It didn't involve weapons. It didn't involve hiding. It involved joy. By midday, the first broadcasts began. In a small town in Italy, people set up a stage in the central square. Musicians tuned their instruments, children danced, and voices sang old songs that had been passed down for generations. Cameras captured it all and sent it to the world. In Brazil, a street filled with the scent of roasted food, laughter ringing between the buildings. In Kenya, villagers painted bright patterns on the ground, while drummers filled the air with rhythm. In Japan, lanterns were strewn from one end of a market to the other, their soft light glowing like fireflies. Everywhere, people celebrated, not in ignorance, but in defiance. Leah found herself in the middle of one such gathering. A group of children pulled her into a circle, their small hands warm in hers. They laughed, spinning and dancing, their joy infectious. For a moment, she forgot the silver shapes hanging in the sky, high above. Velthar watched the scenes unfold on his command screen. Instead of panic and surrender, he saw humans dancing under his shadow. He saw markets bustling, music playing, people embracing. His jaw tightened. What are they doing? He demanded. An officer hesitated before answering. They appear to be celebrating. Celebrating, Velthar snapped. We threaten them, and they respond with celebration. Yes, Commander, the officer said softly. It seems they are unafraid. The words unsettled him more than he cared to admit. Fear was the Dominion's sharpest weapon. Without it, control was impossible. Down below, the alien patrols were caught in the middle of the human response. When they entered a town, they were met not with resistance or violence, but with invitations. A soldier who came to observe found himself holding a paper lantern. Another was handed a bowl of steaming soup by an elderly woman who spoke no alien language, but smiled warmly. In the capital, a stage was set for the largest gathering yet. Cameras from across the world focused on one woman standing at the center, Leah Carter. Her voice was steady, clear, and translated into the alien tongue. Commander Velthar, and all who serve with him, you came here to take our people, believing you could break us. But you cannot take what we will not give. You cannot chain the human spirit. We are not afraid, and we will not serve. Her words rippled through the alien fleet. Soldiers listening to the broadcast shifted uncomfortably. Some lowered their eyes. Others clenched their jaws, torn between loyalty and the strange pull of the truth they'd begun to see. Velthar's hands tightened on the edge of his command table. He told himself it was just words, but deep inside, he knew the damage was already done. His own people had been exposed to something dangerous, the idea that there was a different way to live, on the ground. The celebrations continued late into the night. Lanterns glowed in the darkness, songs rose into the air, and laughter carried far across the land. Under the shadow of the alien fleet, humanity stood together, without weapons, without surrender, without fear, and somewhere in the quiet of the flagship, a young alien officer replayed Leah's speech, again and again. The words echoing in his mind like a melody he could not forget. The celebrations had lasted through the night. By morning, the streets were quiet again. But the quiet was not the silence of fear, it was the calm of a people who had faced the storm and were still standing. From her apartment window in the capital, Leah Carter could see the flags still fluttering over rooftops. Music instruments lay against walls, waiting for the next song. She sipped her tea, her mind replaying the events of the day before, the laughter, the speeches, the unbroken unity. She knew the aliens had seen it all. Up in orbit, stood at the center of his command deck, staring at the pale blue planet below. For the first time in his long career, he did not feel victorious. The human defiance had not been loud or violent, but it had been absolute. He had threatened them with destruction, and they had answered with joy. Around him, the atmosphere among his officers had shifted. They worked quietly, their movements slower than usual. Conversations hushed when he entered the room. He could feel it, the change in their hearts. His people were supposed to believe in Dominion superiority without question, yet now they carried fragments of human music, smells, and smiles in their minds. A report came from one of the lower decks. 2 soldiers had refused an order to prepare landing parties. When questioned, they said they could not take captives from a people who welcomed us as guests. Velthar dismissed them from duty, but the words lodged in his thoughts like a thorn. 4 hours, he stood at the viewing wall, weighing his options. He could order an attack, but an attack would only confirm the human strength to his crew. He could try another threat, but threats had already failed. The truth was bitter. The mission was collapsing, not because of human weapons, but because of human will. That evening, the decision came quietly. Without ceremony, Velthar sent a command through the fleet. All ships will disengage from orbit. We are withdrawing immediately. No explanation was given. No speeches were made. The alien fleet began to move, their silver hulls gliding silently away from the blue and green world they had failed to conquer. On the ground, people noticed the change. First, the low hum in the sky faded. Then the great shadows that had hovered Over cities began to drift upward, shrinking against the clouds. Word spread quickly. They're leaving. In the capital square. A crowd gathered, staring upward, as the last ship disappeared into the morning sky. Some people cheered. Others simply stood in awe, hardly believing it was over. Leah was there among them. She felt no need to shout or celebrate wildly. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the quiet victory settle inside her. They had not fired a single shot, yet they had defended their world. High above, aboard his flagship, Velthor remained silent as the planet grew smaller in the viewing wall. His officers avoided his gaze. He knew the retreat was a humiliation that would echo through the Dominion's history. But he also knew something else. Something he would never admit aloud. Part of him was relieved as the fleet slipped into faster-than-light travel. Velthor allowed himself one last glance at the cloth-wrapped bread still on his desk. He didn't throw it away. Back on Earth, night fell peacefully for the first time in weeks. Families ate together without looking over their shoulders. Markets stayed open late, lit by strings of lanterns. Children played in the streets, their laughter carrying into the warm air. The world had learned something important, that strength was not only in armies and weapons, but in kindness, unity, and the refusal to surrender who you are. The aliens had come for captives. They had left with nothing but shame. The celebrations had lasted through the night. By morning, the streets were quiet again. But the quiet was not the silence of fear. It was the calm of a people who had faced the storm and were still standing. From her apartment window in the capital, Leah Carter could see the flags still fluttering over rooftops. Music instruments lay against walls, waiting for the next song. She sipped her tea, her mind replaying the events of the day before. The laughter, the speeches, the unbroken unity. She knew the aliens had seen it. All up in orbit, Velthor stood at the center of his command deck, staring at the pale blue planet below. For the first time in his long career, he did not feel victorious. The human defiance had not been loud or violent, but it had been absolute. He had threatened them with destruction, and they had answered with joy. Around him the atmosphere among his officers had shifted. They worked quietly, their movements slower than usual. Conversations hushed when he entered the room. He could feel it, the change in their hearts. His people were supposed to believe in Dominion superiority without question, yet now they carried fragments of human music, smells, and smiles in their minds. A report came from one of the lower decks. 2 soldiers had refused an order to prepare landing parties. When questioned, they said they could not take captives from a people who welcomed us as guests. Velthor dismissed them from duty, but the words lodged in his thoughts like a thorn. 4 hours, he stood at the viewing wall, weighing his options. He could order an attack, but an attack would only confirm the human strength to his crew. He could try another threat, but threats had already failed. The truth was bitter. The mission was collapsing. Not because of human weapons, but because of human will. That evening, the decision came quietly. Without ceremony, Velthor sent a command through the fleet. All ships will disengage from orbit. We are withdrawing immediately. No explanation was given. No speeches were made. The alien fleet began to move, their silver hulls gliding silently away from the blue and green world they had failed to conquer. On the ground, people noticed the change. First, the low hum in the sky faded. Then the great shadows that had hovered over cities began to drift upward, shrinking against the clouds. Word spread quickly. They're leaving. In the capital square. A crowd gathered, staring upward, as the last ship disappeared into the morning sky. Some people cheered. Others simply stood in awe, hardly believing it was over. Leah was there among them. She felt no need to shout or celebrate wildly. Instead, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath, letting the quiet victory settle inside her. They had not fired a single shot, yet they had defended their world. High above, aboard his flagship, Velthor remained silent as the planet grew smaller in the viewing wall. His officers avoided his gaze. He knew the retreat was a humiliation that would echo through the Dominion's history. But he also knew something else. Something he would never admit aloud. Part of him was relieved as the fleet slipped into faster-than-light travel. Velthor allowed himself one last glance at the cloth-wrapped bread still on his desk. He didn't throw it away. Back on Earth, night fell peacefully for the first time in weeks. Families ate together without looking over their shoulders. Markets stayed open late, lit by strings of lanterns. Children played in the streets, their laughter carrying into the warm air. The world had learned something important, that strength was not only in armies and weapons, but in kindness, unity, and the refusal to surrender who you are. The aliens had come for captives. They had left with nothing but shame.